Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dennae Handford, and my wife, Dennae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur. On the podcast with us today is Pancham Gupta. Pancham, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dennae, for having me.
Pancham, we appreciate you sitting down and spending some time talking with us today. And we'd like for you to get us started by telling us a little bit about your journey into the world of an entrepreneur and where your current focus is.
Sure. I came to United States in 2003 for my master's. I always wanted to go back to India, where I'm originally from. But, things didn't pan out that way. And then back in 2012, I decided that I would stay in this country. And that's when I actually started my entrepreneurial journey. And, I was always interested in real estate because my dad in India, he was in real estate and I saw him doing all that stuff while growing up. So I started doing that stuff here. Market is very, very different in the United States as compared to India. So I started reading a lot about it and bought one home, then the second, then the third. It just became a passion after that. And that's how I started with my entrepreneurial journey. It's mainly in real estate.
We want to go through a couple of tough decisions that you've had to make along this journey as an entrepreneur in real estate here. And first one we like to start off with is one that we call a sore thumb tough decision. So it's a tough decision that you had to spend a lot of time thinking and deciding on, and it did not end up doing very well. So it was kind of a not so good outcome, but you learned a lot of lessons through it. So I want to talk through that tough decision and then dive into some of the lessons that you learned through it and what you do now to mitigate it.
Great. So I have actually a lot of those. But I'll pick one specific to real estate. So in 2015 or so, I bought a property in Georgia. It was a pretty big condo. It was 5-bedroom and 4-bathroom, 3,000 square foot condo right next to University of Georgia. If people who are not familiar with UGA, it's a pretty big college football town. It's SEC, it's part of the SEC conference. And so we did a very hybrid model with that particular condo to start off with. What we did, we had from Monday to Friday, actually Sunday night to Friday evening, all the professionals or semi-professional who were working in UGA or high, grad students coming from Atlanta or all over the place to UGA wanted a place for the week to stay and go back home over the weekend. So we actually targeted those people during the week, and they came in and they stayed over there. And then over the weekend, we would do Airbnb. So it was kind of a hybrid model. The weekdays for only the professionals by the room, and weekend the whole property by Airbnb. So that was the model, and we actually had a PM who was willing to do that. So we, started doing this. We started making a lot of money, and on one weekend, one game day weekend, people who are not aware of SEC conference, it's one of the biggest college football conference, and the games for these particular the rooms for these games go very, very quickly, all the properties. So we rented out, we used to rent out the one weekend for $2,500 to $3,000, just 2 nights. So we actually started making a lot of money. And what happened along the way, the PM was a long-term PM. He wasn't really trained for doing Airbnb stuff. So there is a lot involved for this kind of model, because on Friday night, imagine everyone who's leaving will have to get the property, all the bedrooms cleaned up, all 3,000 square foot condo. It takes about 4 hours to do it, and then we'll have to get it ready for the people to check in. So we were, making a lot of money. We kept on going and doing this, but we started getting a little bit of bad reviews because the property wasn't really cleaned up properly, and we looked into it. We tried to change our cleaning crew, and it worked out okay. And we kept on doing this. And one night, the nightmare happened. So what happened? The property manager, who was supposed to let all the tenants know that, oh, you know what, we have a booking this weekend. and he forgot to let them know. And
I can see where this is going.
Luckily 4 of the 5 tenants were away that weekend regardless. That was by design. But, people stayed over the weekend if we did not let them know. So one guy did not leave. And the guests who had long flight from wherever they were coming from, checked in through the lockbox at 11:30 p.m. Imagine what happened. Those guys get in and the room is not empty. Someone is sleeping there. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they're coming from a long flight. It's 11:30 p.m. Who do they call? Because we were managing all the Airbnb, they called us. And we were about to go to bed at 11:30 p.m. And I pick up this call from Georgia. I'm like, who's this? And to my nightmare, then how the story unfolded. They're like, oh, there's someone over here. And, I'm trying to call the PM and PM is not picking up my phone. Then I called the assistant PM. He's not picking up my phone. It's 11:30 PM. And I'm trying to be with the guest and all that. So to cut the long story short, we managed to handle this particular situation by talking to the guest, who was very accommodating. He knew this, and the guests who were there for that weekend and also the tenant who was long-term tenant, both of them kind of, I don't know what they did, but they both agreed to stay there overnight because they were there for the game, the people who were visiting, and this guy was there, just in his room. So we refunded a lot of money back to the people who were there for the weekend. And the long story short, as far as the lessons learned, I should have cut the PM right when we were getting the bad reviews. We should have stopped the model. Me and my wife discussed it like multiple times before that, but we did not do it because we were making a lot of money. So we got greedy there. So that's the lesson over there, that, cut your, when you have something that's not going right, act quickly and do it right away, as opposed to waiting for bad things to happen.
So, Pancham, I'm interested to know, have you tried this hybrid model in other places? Do you continue to use the hybrid model there? And have you made any adjustments in the way that you set that up because of this situation?
No, so we have stopped doing the hybrid model, even though we were making money and I know this can work. Our philosophy has changed to, we want to get the right people for the right job. So if there is a Airbnb trained property management company, they are only trained in those things. They're not trained in long-term tenants versus a company which is trained for long-term tenants. So for us to do this model, if we are not really local to that particular property, it's very, very difficult. So we have stopped doing this, even though we're making less money, but it's working out very nice as of right now. We're still making money on the property, but just not as much.
When I look at this situation here, Pancham, I'm trying to think, back to get into the mindset that you and your wife had of maybe some of the reasons or some of the thoughts that you guys had of not acting sooner. And I know you probably now think about things a little bit quicker, and maybe act a little bit sooner on things, but what were some of the things that were going through your head as to maybe some of the reasons why you didn't act sooner on getting rid of this PM?
So the reasons that we did not get him out sooner was, we were thinking, this is the first time for this guy to do this way. And this is the first time for us to do it this way. And we are going to have some challenges. Why not work through the challenges first and see if we can overcome them? And we tried to do that, for all the bad reviews that we were getting, but it was not getting solved. We kept on having one problem after the another. There was toilet paper missing sometimes. There were towels missing sometimes. There were, iron board missing. We had many, many issues before this when we came to this conclusion. And the reasons we delayed it so long was because we were trying to work through those challenges. It just did not work out. That was the thought process.
Let's shift here a little bit, Pancham, and talk about a tough decision that you've had to make along this journey, and one that had a really good and positive outcome in some of those lessons.
Sure. I would like to mention my first syndication on a multifamily deal in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a 44-unit deal. So a little bit of backstory before this.
for our listeners, tell them a little bit about what a syndication is, because I know sometimes in the circles that you and I are, float around and stuff, we kind of have that word kind of down and we know what it is, but some of our listeners might not know what that is when it comes to real estate.
Sure. Syndication is nothing but a group of people coming together to do a project. When it comes to real estate, it's basically buying a property and pulling some money resources together and taking down a property. Or if it is a company, starting a company together. All of those things are sort of syndications where people come together to do a project. So what I was trying to do, I was trying to pool money together through a bunch of investors who wanted to make their money work versus and give it to me, who was willing to do the hard work and knew how to run properties, take down this particular apartment building. So that's basically a syndication model. They get to enjoy all the returns and the benefits of owning a property, and we get to do a deal. So it's like a marriage, money and the deal together. So we had this particular property that we wanted to do. And before this, we were looking at a lot of properties. And every single time we were going in the contract or looking at the property, we were falling behind the market. Our mindset was every time we got into a contract on a particular building, we thought that we are overpaying for this particular property. We were looking at all the past comps around that time, and always, the market was going up from the last time where we were. So we felt we were always second guessing ourselves whether we should go and buy and pull the trigger on this particular property. So for this particular property, the guy wanted 1.75 million. We offered him 1.5 million. He came back with 1.7. We told him, okay, 1.7. He came back with 2 million. After that, it was very weird. And we were like, oh, you know what? You started with 1.75, you want 2 million. He was like, oh, you know what? Market has moved. They have added this much value to the property since we last spoke. I'm like, it's only like 2 weeks since we last spoke. He's like, they have done so many things on this property since then. I did not want to believe him, and I actually did not believe him on that particular thing. But we were like second guessing ourselves, is it really worth 2 million? After talking to a lot of people and one of my mentors, we actually pulled the trigger on this particular property. It was a very tough decision on our part, but since then, it has worked out so well for us that we have not only returned 13% annually cash on cash return, which is basically for your audience who don't know what cash on cash is. Cash on cash return is, it's basically putting $100,000 in. And if you're putting $100,000 in and you're making $13,000 every year on that 100,000, that would be 13% cash on cash. So we have been returning 13% the year one and 12% the year two on this particular property. And this property has gone up in value as well because we've done so many things on that. So since we bought it. So that is one decision I would say that was a tough decision which we took, but it worked out in our favor.
That is an amazing story. And I would say, how can I invest with you? Because that was a great deal. Can I get on that deal?
On that deal, I'm sorry, no, but there are
That's
many.
Isn't it? And the investors want out.
No one wants out on that particular deal. But, the lesson from that particular deal is that, you want to surround yourself with people who actually have done these things before so that they can hold your hand and take you further and see the blind spots that you don't see and help you make a decision which you wouldn't otherwise have made.
Pancham, can you talk about some strategies that you like to use when you're facing a tough decision?
Yeah, sure. One thing, like I mentioned, I want to surround myself with people who have done those things in the past. I'm not the first one, unless I'm building a rocket ship which is taking me to Mars. I'm sure there are situations where other people have already faced, right? So I would want to, my number one thing is talk to people who have been there before. And number two, I try to calm myself down and put myself into sort of like meditative state, but not really doing meditation, and think through all the pros and cons very objectively without any subjectivity into it, and see if that makes sense after I've done the first thing. So these are the two things that I try to do whenever I'm facing a tough decision.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our show sponsors. When we come back, we'll talk to Pancham about some of his favorites as it relates to his life as an entrepreneur.
Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HandfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HandfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD Capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HandfordCapital.com. And we are back with Pancham Gupta. Pancham, I want you to go through this series of quick questions and answers with us that we call the Trifecta, and start us off with this first question of what's your favorite technology that you use in business that helps make your life easier every day?
The answer to this question is not going to be profound. It's Google Suites. I use all of Google services plus the MailChimp to make my life easier when it comes to running my business, whether it's calendar, whether it's email, whether it's Google Drive. All of those things help me really keeping myself together and all the things together related to business.
What's a favorite quote that you've heard that has helped you as an entrepreneur?
Okay, so this one is from an Indian entrepreneur named Ratan Tata. He is the owner of Tata Motors, who own Range Rover and Land Rover as well as of right now. So one guy asked him, how do you make a tough decision? His quote was, I don't. I make a decision and I make it right. And I then make it right. So that's the quote I actually go by in a lot of my things, that I make a decision and then make it right later on.
And what's a favorite book that you have read that has helped you in your decision making?
I would say The One Thing has been really, really helpful in helping me make decisions or better decisions as an entrepreneur.
And what's the next thing for you right now on your vision or dream board?
The next thing is, I would say, starting a podcast and really helping out high-paid professionals who are making very high salaries in their jobs, but they don't know how to invest their money or how to go about, in general, personal finance in their lives. So that's the next thing that I'm going to do.
That's exciting. Well, how can the listeners reach out to you if they want to contact you, follow you more, or maybe even jump on a call with you and talk about some of these investment opportunities that you have?
Sure. They can reach out to me on my email. It's my first name dot last name, PANCHAM.Gupta, GUPTA, at mesoscapital.com. That's MESOS capital.com.
Well, Pancham, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to being with us today and sharing all your insights, and looking forward to continuing to follow you and look forward to having you on a future episode as you continue to grow as an entrepreneur.
Great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.